feels like hunting. He flies to an Alaskan ice cap to shoot polar bear. And this is where he works for a living. The hours are short. The pay is good. The occupational hazards are considerable. On the job or off the job, this man leads the life of a Hemingway hero. This is Herman Salmon, and this is his story. The story of a test pilot. From the time men took to the air, from the time Orville Wright made the first powered flight in history, the profession of test pilot has been a challenging one, with the results sometimes unpredictable. Only a half-century later, aviation has produced planes like the X-15, the first experimental rocket plane, tribute to a long line of test pilots. Hello, my name is John Willis. The story of a test pilot. Now, what kind of image does that bring to your mind? The fearless daredevil with goggles and the flying white scarf ready to take off in the wild blue yonder? Well, our test pilot was like that years ago. But in his job today, he combines advanced engineering knowledge with the sure hand of the veteran flyer. The man whose story we're telling is the chief test pilot at the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in Burbank, California. His name is Herman R. Salmon, and as long as he can remember, he's been called Fish. His job calls for him to fly everything and anything that comes off the drawing boards and tries to keep business hours, usually arriving at the flight line at 7:30. Today he does a job for the Navy, testing a jet designed to take off from an aircraft carrier.
I don't recall having any apprehensions of flying a new airplane. Number one, you pick the best weather. Number two, it's almost like an old friend by the time you get into it. You know where all the switches are. In fact, you know the airplane more thoroughly than you know some airplane that has been flying for 5 years that you want to get a check ride in.
His day's work done, Fish leaves for his suburban home nearby.
I don't think test flying is as dangerous as a lot of other jobs around the city of Los Angeles here. I don't think it's as dangerous as actually driving the freeways back and forth to work.
Sometimes Fish recalls the days when he was young and dreamed of being a flyer. Back in 1927, all America welcomed the Lone Eagle on his triumphant return from Paris. In Milwaukee, 14-year-old Herman Salmon was up bright and early on the day Lindbergh arrived.
After Lindy flew the Atlantic, he became everyone's hero. I got up before dark to be at the airport when he came to town. I spent the day following him around. I guess that was about the biggest day of my life. I made up my mind then I was going to become a pilot.
But it wasn't easy for Fish. Back in those early days, flying lessons cost $50 an hour. Fish was short on cash, but long on nerve. At the age of 18, he got a job at an air circus, sitting on a wing. Sort of an outside job. He did acrobatics, parachute jumping, skydiving, anything to bring the crowd up in their seats and earn money for those flying lessons. Finally, he got an inside job as a pilot. It was safer that way. Fish got a transport pilot's license so he could work in commercial aviation. And when the war broke out in Europe, he took a job with the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. They hired him to ferry bombers up to Canada for delivery to the RAF. It was a routine job with little excitement. What Fish really wanted was to be the first to fly the new planes being developed. About that time, Lockheed introduced an exciting new fighter. It was called the P-38 Lightning. The Army Air Corps was accepting delivery on the 38s. At first, pilots lacked confidence that they could recover from a spin in this radically designed plane with its great power. A few pilots couldn't get the controls out of their laps. They'd go all the way down with the plane.
I had been spinning planes ever since my stunning days. I had a good idea how to make a recovery on this baby. Lockheed agreed to let me try it. It was a chance to prove I could be a test pilot. 354 to the ground. I'm up here at 20,000 feet, directly overhead. Ready for power on spin. Almost stalled. 100 miles per hour. 95, 90, there she goes. One turn, power off. Two turns, oscillating quite a bit. Three turns, oscillations dampening out. Four turns, spin steady, nose down. Five turns, steady. Six turns, steady. Full opposite rudder, half a turn. Six forward and out in the turn. Held it for 6 turns and 1 turn for recovery.
The technique developed by Fish Salmon solved the problem of the P-38. It became one of the most valued fighters of World War II. War, with the dawn of the jet age, Fish begins testing new kinds of planes. The P-80, first operational jet fighter in the country. The F-94 Starfire, a rocket-firing jet interceptor. And this unusual plane, a constellation which can be used as either a hurricane hunter or an early warning radar picket ship. Also tests the XFV-1, a radically new vertical takeoff plane. Climbing even higher, Fish reaches the top of his profession. With his wife, Edie, he attends meetings of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots. Here, he swaps stories with Scott Crossfield, pilot of the X-15, with Alan Shepard, America's first man in space. In this unique society gather men whose shop talk borders on fantasy. 2,000-mile-an-hour passenger planes, and trips to the moon. Curious to know why men like these risk their lives daily, I went to see Dr. Charles Barron, medical director at Lockheed.
I've known test pilots for as long as I've been a physician, which is about 20 years. I have no greater admiration for any group of people that I know of than I do for the pilots, because day in and day out, they knowingly and deliberately risk their life every time they fly some of these aircraft.
Do you think there's anything to this subconscious wish for death that we hear about? Do you believe this?
I find it very difficult to accept that. I have found these pilots, regardless of the fact that they may engage in this occupation, to be a very stable, emotionally stable, a very mature type of individual. And the fact that so many of them, especially Fish Salmon, has been around for 20 or 25 years, was certainly indicate that they have no desire to die.
I went to see Fish and his family at their home in Northridge, California.
Here you go. Here you go. Don't worry.
I asked Fish how it felt to take up an untested plane, to be the first to fly it at supersonic speeds. How does he approach each new flight? Is there any feeling of fear?
Well, actually, I don't think there's any fear connected with flying. Sometimes I guess there's a little apprehension. I think there's a big difference between fear and apprehension. It's a funny thing to say, but sitting up there alone, going along to beat the band sometime, doing something that you haven't done before, I don't think you're ever alone, although you might be sitting there all by yourself. I can remember a time sitting up there with really nothing to do, sitting there fat, dumb, and happy, going along at speeds that I hadn't been to before. When I just kind of hear myself think, I'd say, Lord, what am I doing here? And I could almost hear him answer me.
A man like Fish Salmon is more than a pilot who flies a new plane. He is part of the engineering team that develops the aircraft. Such is the case with the F-104, a jet fighter designed to fly at 1,500 miles an hour, 2 times the speed of sound. It is to be armed with a powerful new gun, the Vulcan 61, capable of firing 6,000 rounds a minute. Armed with a new gun, Fish has to find out whether the F-104 can stand up to this kind of explosive firepower. Palmdale, California, the day that Fish Salmon will test the 104 with its unusual new gun. A cool April morning on the edge of the Mojave Desert. On the surface, all seems routine. But before this day is over, this test of plane and gun will involve many people, many lives. Flight Test Director W. Laverne Howland leaves with a mobile radio unit to take his post 100 miles from here out on a desert mountaintop. Millions of dollars and thousands of hours have gone into this complex package of highly stressed metal, wire, plastics, and electronic gear. Now it is all in the hands of one man. To Fish Salmon, this is just an ordinary day. He will take the plane up, fire the gun, and be home for supper. Test Director Howland tells Fish over the intercom to proceed with the firing as planned.
Seven, 787, what happened? Where are you? What happened, 787? Come in. Palmdale Tower, Palmdale Tower. I've lost contact with 787. He may be down beside...
Fish Salmon is down. All over Southern California, the word goes out. The response is immediate. From a dozen fields, searchers take to the sky to seek one of the most respected pilots in the business. The search is thorough and successful. Fish is found on the desert, slightly injured but safe. Thanks go to friends who searched for him, and especially to the man who packed his parachute. When a multi-million-dollar experimental plane crashes, a full investigation follows. Engineers from Lockheed, government specialists, engine manufacturers, every kind of expert examine all the bits and pieces of the wreck. From Washington, officials come to ask questions. What caused the crash? Was it the fault of the plane? Or was it his fault? Was it pilot error? For days, Fish reports. He answers every question. He tells them everything he knows about the flight. At the conclusion, no blame is assigned to the pilot. But Fish is not satisfied. He has told them everything he remembers, but is he subconsciously blacking out something? He asks Dr. Barron about a drug he's heard about. Sodium pentothal, the memory drug. In the small infirmary at Lockheed, a new kind of test begins. The memory drug is injected.
I'm over the range.
As the sodium pentothal takes effect, Fish remembers for the first time that he had seen a hole blown in the bottom of the plane. This is the clue. Engineers now will realize that the gun's vibrations jarred loose the pilot escape hatch. The hatch will be tightened. The problem is solved, but Fish knows that he'll have to take another F-104 up and fire the guns again. That's his responsibility. The day of the second test. Mechanics have been carefully working over the redesigned plane. Fish arrives early. It will take an hour to get into a specially designed pressure suit. Without someone to help him, he couldn't put the outfit on. The weather on the ground is good. The early winds aloft foretell a perfect day for flying. Inside the dressing room, Fish puts on his pressure suit, custom tailored to his frame at $2,500. Made of nylon, uncomfortable, so tight he can barely breathe, but it can also save his life. The mechanics are always careful, but today, they take extra special precautions. Every part of the plane is checked and double-checked. The suit is fitted out with a special emergency supply of oxygen. For the higher Fish flies, the less air there is to breathe. This F-104 is just a flying gun platform. Its cargo, highly explosive kerosene and bullets. The Vulcan 61 is loaded to fire 6,000 rounds per minute. The ground crew calls this plane Hot Shot Charlie. Inspecting the plane. When Fish arrives, preparations are virtually complete. The new gun checks out perfectly on the ground. Fish gives the final check. He's worked on this plane with the engineers since its conception. He knows every inch of it. Its wings are less than 8 feet long. Its edges razor sharp. Everything seems to be A-OK, but a man never goes up without a parachute. It will take the radio test crew 3 hours to reach their rendezvous in the desert. When he takes off in the 104, Fish will be there in 3 minutes. In 180 seconds, Fish Salmon will know whether plane and gun will perform together.
Palmdale Tower, this is Hot Shot, requesting permission to take off.
Hot shot, 787, cleared for takeoff. Fish, come in. This is KMJ Mobile. Fish, where are you at? Come in.
I'm at K+4. My altitude is 47,000 feet.
Have you made your turn yet at Marsh Field, Fish?
Yes, I've made the turn. I'm lined up for the 3 dry lakes at Muroc, right over the range.
Understand speed. King +4. Go ahead and fire first shot.
Okay, here goes. Everything all right. Smooth as silk.
Okay, Fish. Try the long shot.
Okay, here we go again. I'm on the way back.
The test is successful. The F-104 and the Vulcan 61 are now a proven team. For Fish Salmon, the day's work is over. In 30 years of flying, Fish Salmon has gone from stunting in biplanes to jets like this. The F-104 that he tested and helped perfect is now the backbone of the free world's air forces. For Fish Salmon, it is the end product of another job well done. In the place where he is most at home, in the sky, where he feels he is never quite alone. What would you do if your 38 was in this spin? Would you become panicky and hit the silk? Or would you have the know-how for positive spin recovery? The old rule of throttling back and pushing both rudder and stick forward together is not the way to bring a 38 out of a spin. As a result of an extensive test program, including 27 spins, some of which you are about to see, it was found that you must wait for at least a half a turn between kicking the rudder and moving the control column forward. In other words, when the spin starts, cut the throttles, retract any extended flaps, and kick full rudder, which decreases your rate of rotation. Allow a minimum of half a turn to slow down. Then move the control column forward towards the neutral position. This stops the spin, leaving you in a steep nose-down attitude from which recovery is a cinch. Here is Herman Salmon, nicknamed Fish, Lockheed Engineering test pilot, and the airplane he used in gathering the spin data.
How'd you go, Fish? Buffeted quite a bit and I got thrown around some. But waiting for a half a turn between kicking the rudder and moving the control column forward is sure the way to bring this baby out of a spin.
Just exactly what procedure did you use for recovery?
Well, in a spin, the stick would be back and the rudder hard over like this. Then, first I cut the throttles and kicked the rudder hard against the spin. Wait for at least half a turn before moving the control column forward towards a neutral position. When I've got about 150 to 200 miles per hour, I ease back on the stick and make my pull-out, remembering to be careful not to pull out too sharply because I might stall and spin the other way.
Hold that control column where it is a second, Fish, and tell us what that switch on the wheel is for.
This is a switch which turns on the cameras and other test equipment when I begin a spin. They continuously record my attitude, altitude, and airspeed, as well as the exact position of my control surfaces and the amount of pressure I apply at every instant throughout the spin.
The installation of these automatic recorders makes it necessary to remove the guns. However, to ensure proper CG, ballast is supplemented in the nose. By changing this ballast, the airplane was spun under all CG conditions from 27% forward all the way back to 32% gear up, which is the rearward limit. Fish will go into this next spin with power on. During the first two turns, you will see that the nose is alternately pointed steeply down and then up, close to or above the horizon. This oscillation up and down may give the impression that the airplane is in a flat spin. However, during the third turn, these oscillations dampen out. And from the fourth turn on, the attitude of the airplane is constant in a fairly steep nose-down position. Regardless of whether you enter the spin with power on or off, CG forward or rearward, on single engine or in normal flight, the gear up or down, the turns become quite regular after the fourth one. And you can figure that you will lose about 1,000 feet for each complete turn.
This is 354 to the ground. I'm up here at 20,000 feet, directly overhead. Ready for power on spin. Camera switch on. Almost stalled. 100 miles per hour. 95. 90. Here she goes. One turn, power off. Two turns, oscillating quite a bit. Three turns, oscillations dampening out. Four turns, spin steady, nose down. 5 turns, steady. 6 turns, steady. Full opposite rudder, half a turn. Stick forward and out in a turn. Held it for 6 turns and 1 turn for recovery.